Today I'm going to take a look at the first hardcover adventure for D&D 5th edition, Hoard of the Dragon Queen. Hoard of the Dragon Queen was released in August of 2014, just after 5th edition was launched. It was the first hardcover module and the first that was sold separately from the basic set that was released in July. This was the first of two adventures that were meant to be played together. They were going to be called The Tyranny of Dragons, so that's imprinted on the cover. And they were made in partnership with Kobold Press. If they had been more successful, we probably would have seen more adventures from Kobold Press, but that was really not to be. They didn't get a very good review, so I think Wizards was more focused on shifting to developing everything in-house. And so after the first couple adventures came out, pretty much everything since then has just come from Wizards of the Coast. Let's take a look inside. One of the things you'll notice in the table of contents is that the adventure is broken into episodes. They're not even called chapters, they're called episodes. It is very linear. Each section here is a set of encounters that you play. There's not a lot of opportunity for the party to go off in a different direction. You pretty much have to play through those as they're written, and then you move on to the next one and to the next one. They get a little bit longer as you go on, but it's definitely more what would be considered a railroad. Probably not a bad thing, considering it's the first real module for 5th edition, and it's designed for people who are just getting used to the game, but I know some people are not going to be crazy about that. Something else you notice is that the pages are not magazine paper. They're actually a matte finish with thicker paper, but not glossy. And that, I think, comes into play a little bit later, where it's one of the problems that I have with this book. And so we'll talk about that when we get to it. The first section is the introduction, and you get a map of the Sword Coast with the town of Greenest where you're starting, as well as the other locations. It gives you a little bit of overview of what's going on. Pretty standard stuff for an adventure module. In episode 1, the characters are arriving in the town of Greenest. There's not a lot of adventure hooks. It's pretty much you're in a caravan and you're arriving at this town, and that's pretty much all you get. So if you wanted something else, you really need to come up with it on your own. As they arrive in the town, it's under attack by a dragon as well as cultists, and the party is kind of forced to engage with these cultists, and there's different ways that you're instructed to try to get the characters to engage and participate in this battle. There's some random encounters that can take place, and then there's some more specific encounters that they can do to help bring the battle to a close. During the battle, someone is kidnapped from the town, and you learn that after it's over, and that basically leads you into episode number 2. And in this episode, you are asked by the governor of the town to go and find the cultists that attacked the village and see what they're up to and why they did it. So this one is a little bit of a sandbox, because you do have to travel to it and you got to stay on the trail. And then once you're in the camp, it's more just kind of exploration and role playing as you try to infiltrate this camp and figure out what's going on. You can see here on this page where the map is one of the problems I have with the cardstock that they use for the paper, is that because it's not a glossy finish, it's this matte finish, I feel that has caused the ink to bleed a little more than it would if it was different paper that they used. And as a result, it's very dark in areas of this map. And you see it on the other maps as well. The dark areas are really dark, and they bleed into each other, where it's kind of hard to make out what's actually there. So that's one of the things I'm not crazy about, and I think that's the paper that's at fault as opposed to the map itself, which I think is perfectly fine. As part of this one, you have to free the monk who is kidnapped from the town, and that basically then launches you into the next part of the adventure. And episode 3 is the Dragon Hatchery, which is essentially a dungeon crawl where you make your way through this cave complex where there's some dragon eggs that are being incubated. You have the option of what you do with those eggs. You can either destroy them or ignore them or whatever. It's not really the main part of this. The main part of it is actually meeting up with the lead cultist here and getting some information from them, which then leads to episode 4. You can see that we move pretty quickly through each of these sections. This one is on the road, and here we get travel from Greenest now to another town of El Terrell, and this is supposed to take quite a bit of time. And so what you have is just some details about what's going to happen here. There's some non-player characters, quite a few non-player characters actually, so trying to keep up with those is probably going to be fun for the DM to figure that out. You get some random encounters that you can run on the road, and then in addition to that, you get some encounters that you should definitely plan to run, because these are the ones that will actually move the story forward. So you'll want to make sure that you make note of those. And then once you arrive at your destination, there's a note here where you could stop at Waterdeep and do some stuff, or you could just continue straight on to the final destination, which is this Carnath Roadhouse. And in here is where the supplies are being unloaded, and you see some suspicious activity, and that leads you to investigate the next part of this adventure. So once you're at the roadhouse, you find this secret door, and that leads you out onto the road. And then it's a couple days travel, but you're following a trail that leads you to this castle. And so in episode 6, you are actually now at a castle where the cultists have been congregating. And there's a few random encounters that you can run on the way to the castle. And then the castle itself actually has some pretty good detail. This is another location with multiple maps that go with it. Some pretty good detail on each one. And, I mean, it plays fine. There's nothing wrong with any of these. I think it's just more the railroad nature of it is probably not going to sit well with some people. But, you get a lot of good maps here to work with, and some good encounters to work with as well. And once you get to the end here, you're going to find a teleportation circle, and that circle is going to take you to the next location, which is really the main location of the adventure. And so that brings you into episode 7, which is the hunting lodge. This is where these cultists have actually set up shop. So this is where their leader is, and where most of them are. And again, it's another location with some good maps and different things that can happen as you investigate and try to learn about what's going on. And as you're here, you will then find out where the main leader is. You can form some alliances. And what you do is you find out that there's a cloud castle that is on the ground near the city of Parnast, or the town of Parnast. And you then would need to travel to Parnast to deal with that, because that is ultimately where the leader of this cult is located. And that brings you to episode 8, which is the climax of the adventure. You end up in the city of Parnast, and how you get there is really kind of up to you. They don't have a whole lot of details about how you're going to get there, whether you can use some magical transport or you actually travel over land. But you find Skyreach Castle is parked next to the town, and you then have to infiltrate the castle and in some way deal with what's going on. And ultimately, you end up meeting up with Blagothkus, who is your main villain in this story. And he is a cloud giant. So you basically will fight him, and that brings the adventure to a close. And it ends with a note how this story will then continue into the second part of this adventure, which is the Rise of Tiamat, and that's the other book in this set. So you go through there, and then you get into some stuff with some backgrounds, and then all of the monster stats for the creatures and NPCs in the adventure. And that's what Hoard of the Dragon Queen is. It's 94 pages long. It costs $30, which is a little steep. It's not a bad adventure. It's pretty simple. And it's probably what you would expect for a 5th edition adventure, since it was one of the first. I think the biggest complaint that people have is that it is heavily railroaded, and you don't have a lot of opportunity for players to deviate from what's in the text. The DM would need to do that on their own. Whether that's good or bad depends really on the party that you're playing. Some parties that would be perfectly fine. Other ones, they want a little more flexibility. But let me know in the comments what you think. If you've played it, what did you think of it while you're playing it? If you've run it as a DM, what did you think of it as a DM? And, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. If you do like the videos, please click like and subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell. You'll find out when I drop another one. And I would really appreciate any comments that you want to leave. So until next time, take care.